You are tapped in with Caden. In this video, we're going to discuss reasons why Boot's performance against Karen is viewed as a failure. So, one of the first reasons is Boots didn't have a healthy fear of his opponent. Why? Because in the first fight, he won 120 to 108 on every judge's scorecard and every fan's scorecard who was watching the fight. So, he was fighting someone he already dominated and he had no fear of this guy. It was easy work. It's almost like he was thinking, I can turn on the switch whenever I want. And so in this rematch, he was thinking it was pointless. This is just a showcase. At any point in time, basically, the only thing I got to do to win is show up. So that's one of the reasons why his performance is viewed as a failure. It's because he didn't have a healthy fear of his opponent. Another reason is Karen had the utmost respect for Boots after the first fight and being dominated in impressive fashion in the first fight. So Karen spent his entire training camp preparing for the rematch. Karen was probably had the best training camp of his career, whereas Boots probably had one of the most lackadaisical, relaxed, chill vibe type of training camp, just going through the motions. But Karen wasn't doing that. Karen was training because Karen knew what he was up against. And so when you have one person training like their life and their career depends on it, and you have another person kind of sleeping on silk sheets, going in the gym, going through the motions, that's what you get. You get that type of fight. So that's another reason why Boots' performance against Karen is viewed as a failure, because Boots really wasn't training with the mentality. It's also a mindset. Your mind has to be prepared to go in the ring and go to war as well. It's not just the physical, it's also the mental. I think Boots' mental was, I'm just going in here for a showcase. Only thing I have to do is show up to win. And Karen was showing up to right a wrong, but also to make a statement. And Karen did go in there and make a statement. So another reason is the fans weren't interested in this fight. They said it. The arena wasn't as packed as it was for the first fight. It wasn't as packed as it was for fights that Boots had prior to this fight. So the fans weren't interested in this fight. This is a fight that the fans didn't want to see, which is another reason why I said it's a pointless rematch. And I don't understand why this rematch even happened. We'll get into it later. I know some people are like, oh, it's a mandatory. He had to fight as mandatory. I'm going to get into that a little later in this video. But again, the fans weren't interested in this fight. And in the end, do you fight for belts? Like, your family can't eat the belts. I don't know how much you can sell the belts for or on, in an auction. But what I do know is that nobody wanted to see this rematch. It was the rematch that nobody asked for, and the fans didn't turn out for this fight. So another reason why this fight was a failure is Boots already beat him 120 to 108. That's winning every single round. How do you improve on a performance where you won every single round and got the decision, a shutout decision on all three scorecards? The only way to improve on that is to get a knockout. So Boots is trying to make a statement, trying to show he's a better fighter than he was the first time he went the distance with Karen. And as a result, he's pressing. Because he's pressing, he's not worried about defense. And because he's not worried about defense, he's getting hit with a lot of clean punches. And every time he went to the corner, his dad, Bozzy's saying, get him out of there. Get him out of there. See, this is the problem, right? And this is why I'm not of the school of thought where you had to be a fighter in order to be a trainer. But I do think, and this is what Floyd Mayweather used to always talk about, like, how can you tell me what to do in a crunch moment if you've never been in a crunch moment, right? Clearly, Boots was in a fight where it was lose-lose from the beginning. The only way he could win was if he got a knockout, let's say inside 5 rounds. Otherwise, people were going to be like, yeah, whatever. So he was in a lose-lose situation from the beginning. The fight's not going his way. And every time he goes to the corner, he's reminded of that because his trainer and his dad keep saying, just get him out of there already. Get him out of there already. He sounds more like a fan in the crowd than his trainer. At that point, and Sergio Mora even said it again. Sergio Mora, former champion, the Latin Snake, he said, Karen's not going out tonight. You might as well just use your jab, and dominate. And so, again, once it was evident that Cameron was there to show up and fight, you just go and you dominate, and you'll probably find the punch. And if you hurt him, then jump on him. Boots did hurt Karen at one point, and Karen took a knee. And this shows you the high level intellect you're dealing with. Ego fighters with a big ego, when they're hurt and they're in that position where one more punch will send them to orbit, their ego will make them stand up and slug. But not Karen. Karen knew, I am buzzed. If I get hit again, the fight might be over. Immediately took a knee. Boots had to pull his punch back. Fighters don't take a knee enough. I brought that up in one of my videos where it's on this channel, I believe, where it states what fighters should do when they get hurt. Salute to Karen taking that knee. Boots wasn't able to land that punch. He was able to recover, and he was able to finish the fight. So, yeah, the only way Boots could improve was by getting a knockout. His dad kept trying to tell him to get a knockout. The crowd was restless. The crowd wasn't impressed with it. The crowd showed up to see a knockout. There was a lot on Boots that night, and the pressure was on him, and it was tough for him to deliver that knockout because Karen was in the ring with Boots before, so he knew Boots' speed. He knew angles that Boots can hit. He knew more things about Boots. He wasn't someone who was just in the ring fresh with Boots. So that's another reason why this fight is a failure. And one of the main reasons why this fight is a failure is because the only way Boots could improve on what he did in that first fight was by knocking out Karen. And instead, Karen actually improved, because the first fight he lost 120 to 108. And on some scorecards, he lost like 119 to 107. The closest one, I think, was 116 to 110. But let me just tell you, the 119 card was too wide. The 117, the 116, 110 is more in line with what I saw. But the 119 card, it wasn't that wide. Karen definitely did his thing in some of those rounds. And lastly, the last point I'm going to end with in this video is fighters need to learn from Canelo and vacate the IBF. See, I'm noticing a trend with the IBF, and perhaps this is why Turki Al-Sheikh doesn't even want to recognize the IBF belt. If you look on BoxRec, they even removed the IBF belt. You have Saul Canelo Alvarez, the face of boxing. Some people would argue, Tank, I'm not rolling in the mud. Canelo's been at the top of the sport for years. He's been top of Forbes for years in terms of highest paid athletes. If you want to argue someone else is the face of the sport, good, that's on you. But Canelo Alvarez, the face of the sport, they're telling him he has to fight some guy named Scully. I don't even know who Scully is. I never seen Scully fight. And I watch boxing every weekend. So I can only imagine the casual observer or people who don't follow the sport, if they even know who Scully is. So anytime I got to go to BoxRec to look you up, and I got to go on YouTube to watch your fights, you're probably not a good opponent for the face of boxing. So Canelo is so big. Canelo's like, I'm bigger than the IBF belt. Take your IBF belt, because I'm going to make more money fighting Berlanga. More people know Berlanga, and it's not going to stop me. If anything, I'm glad I don't have to pay your sanctioning fee for that belt. And see, Boots Ennis with this fight, as soon as they announced that Cameron was going to be his mandatory, they should have just vacated the belt, because Boots is an up-and-coming rising star. He's supposed to be bigger than the belt. So for him, if he would have fought a credible opponent, like let's say he vacated that belt and he fought someone else, he probably would have made more money. I spoke about how the venue wasn't packed. If he would have fought someone who people believed was a threat, he probably would have sold it. That venue probably would have been sold out. And so this is the dilemma. Do you value the belt more than you value your pockets? Do you value the belt more than you value your status? Floyd Mayweather used to say, forget the belts. Gervonta Tank Davis was saying, forget the belts most of his career. Became a pay-per-view star, winning secondary belts. So the belts aren't everything. So that's one. So there's two things I want to bring up. One, there's actually a documentary on Amazon, and you can look it up. It's about the corruption with the IBF. Don King's in it. A lot of heavy hitters are in it. A lot of the old school promoters from back when Don was one of the top promoters in the game, they used to pay for IBF rankings. They used to pay to put their fighters in position, right? And then you got the WBA that was involved in a scandal that got exposed where they were pushing Venezuelan fighters because Gilberto, their president, was secretly invested in those fighters and secretly promoting those fighters, which is a conflict of interest. So he was positioning his fighters to get these shots. You can go look these things up. So just because they're telling you that Karen is Boots mandatory, it doesn't mean that Eddie wasn't behind the scenes pushing it. And it doesn't mean that Team Ennis didn't get the person they wanted and that they wanted Karen again, and then they can hide behind the IBF. I'm not saying that's what happened, but don't be surprised if that's what happened. There's boxing corruption. There's evidence of this. You can go look it up. So this is what I'm talking about. But either way, if you're Eddie Hearn, you're the promoter for Jaron Boots Ennis, you got to look at this and say, is this going to make money? Is this going to excite the base? Is Boots going to get up for this fight? Because just like when Anthony Joshua was scheduled to fight Jarrell Big Baby Miller in Madison Square Garden, you can tell both fighters were excited about that fight. They were talking trash. They wanted that fight. Soon as you removed Jarrell Big Baby Miller and you inserted Andy Ruiz, there was such a dip. It was such a dip. Anthony Joshua became so relaxed and everything, and he almost got Andy Ruiz out of there. But he was so relaxed and he was so nonchalant and he didn't have a healthy fear of Ruiz that he got caught with the counter that sent his career in a downward spiral ever since. So if you're Eddie Hearn, you have to find the healthy medium. I get it. You want a showcase fight. Great. You want a showcase fight. But maybe not put someone in a fight where the odds are so one-sided. The only way that they can impress the crowd is by getting a knockout. It hasn't worked, and Eddie's done this. He did it with Anthony Joshua versus Jermaine Franklin when Jermaine Franklin was coming off a loss to Dillian White. You got to stop putting fighters in those positions. Put them in a position where at least they're fighting someone fresh. At least they're fighting someone that the crowd thinks would be somewhat competitive, so they'll spend money. No one's going to spend money to see Jaron Boots Ennis fight a guy he beat every single round in a 12-round fight. It's just not competitive. And trust me, as someone who's paid to be at fights before, I want to feel like I got value for money. And when I know that someone beat someone 120 to 108, I don't feel like I'm getting value for money. So the fact that Karen improved on what happened in the first fight rather than Jaron Boots Ennis improving on what happened in the first fight is the reason why this fight is seen as a failure for Jaron Boots Ennis and his team. The fact that there were less fans in the stands for this fight than in previous fights for Jaron Boots Ennis is another reason why this fight is seen as a failure. Personally, do I think this fight was a failure? I think, wise people learn from the mistakes of others, but you definitely need to not repeat the same mistakes if you want to be successful in this game. Boots Ennis, Team Ennis need to learn from this, even if Eddie Hearn doesn't. That's my take on this. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Please like, share, subscribe. It's Caden. I'm out. Peace.